Anne Arundel County 911, you need police, fire, ambulance.
I need the police. My husband has assaulted me again.
Police, what address?
5702 Patrick Henry Drive.
5702 Patrick Henry Drive? Okay, is he still there?
I think he's outside and we might come back in here.
Are there any weapons?
No, he just hit me with his fist like he always does.
Has he been drinking?
Yes, I think he is because he drinks all the time this time of day.
Okay, are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance?
No, I don't need an ambulance. I'm just scared for me and my kid.
What is your last name?
What you're about to see describes how to obtain a domestic violence protective order from the courts. This video should be used as a guide through the court process, but keep in mind that every case is unique. In addition, you may wish to file a criminal complaint, which is not discussed in this video. At the end of the video, a list of domestic violence prevention centers is provided for those who would like further assistance. For information from the courts, please call 410-260-1580 or log on to www.courts.state.md.us.
Hello, my name is Judge Lenore Gelfman. In this video, some of the people who work in the Maryland court system are going to talk to you about domestic violence. Not about its causes and how to stop it. That's an entirely different subject. Instead, we are going to talk about what to do when it happens to you, and you decide that you want the legal system to help you. First and foremost, you should fully understand that abuse is wrong and it's illegal. Victims of abuse often feel violated, confused, angry, scared, or frustrated. But it's very important to remember that what has happened to you is wrong, and that the legal system is here to keep abuse from happening again. In this video, you are going to hear from judges, court personnel, members of the police, social workers, and victims of domestic violence, all in their own words.
You just have to find the courage within to believe in yourself and go forward. And once you have that confidence, you'll find that there are a lot of people out there that will listen and will help.
We're going to start the legal process from the beginning with the initial decision to get protection from the abuser. Nothing can make it easy, but knowing the process will help you handle each step as it arrives without any surprises.
The first thing an officer accomplishes in a domestic violence situation is they go into a home, and typically we will have 2 police officers at the situation at the home. They will make sure that everything in the home is safe. They'll make sure that not only are the potential victim or suspect safe, but the family members and children are safe, as well as the police officer themselves. So they will make the scene a safe area initially, and then once they do that, they will try to interview each person in the home separately to find out what had happened.
Part of the role of a police officer in a domestic violence situation is to educate the victim on his or her options in the legal process.
We as police officers may make an arrest on the scene. We may actually arrest the offender right then and there. That is one way that the legal process is started. If we do it that way, typically what happens is we place the offender under arrest and we will advise the victim of what to do next. We will take the offender from the home and we will process him at a proper processing center.
The police are trained and they're educated to, when there is a call, to go to that call, and they're not to judge the character of the situation, but to actually execute why they're there. And if that means taking the perpetrator in and then have the questioning, that's what they do. I found myself being glad that the officer, and I was sent there by a police officer, I was glad that he put me in that direction.
I've been in the courtroom on a Monday morning when a woman comes back to court after having pressed charges a month ago, and after the husband was arrested for assaulting her. And the two parties, husband and wife, they come in hand, and it's apparent to everyone that they've reconciled. And once the case is called, both parties appear at the trial table together, and the woman is asking the judge to dismiss the charges. She expresses that they've reconciled, that he has told her that he won't do this again, that they have agreed to get counseling.
This is a personal decision that should be considered very carefully. However, if you choose not to reconcile, you may seek the assistance of the courts.
I am Judge Gary Bass. It is important to understand what a protective order is as well as what it isn't. First, all orders are temporary, including final protective orders which last up to a year. Second, a protective order can do a number of things. It can order the respondent to stop committing abuse or making threats. It can order him or her, because men are victims of domestic violence also, to leave the house. It can give you temporary custody of the children. It can temporarily award financial support from the respondent. It can order the respondent to stay away from you at home, at work, at school. It can order the respondent to surrender to law enforcement any firearms in their possession for the duration of the order. But despite its name, it cannot protect you from harm if you don't take steps to protect yourself. Local and state law enforcement agencies have a copy of the order, which means an officer or deputy sheriff can arrest the respondent if he violates the order. You will receive a copy, and you should keep it in your possession in case the respondent ignores it and you have to call for help. But the simple existence of the order is not a guarantee that the respondent will obey the judge or the court commissioner.
However, violation of the order could result in additional penalties, including incarceration.
I counsel victims of domestic violence, and my office is located close to the courthouse. We're able to assist petitioners with finding a place to stay for themselves and for their children. We're able to refer them to resources that assist with emotional and financial support. We're also able to refer them to attorneys that can represent them at the protective order hearing, or whatever they may need. My office is available to assist with that.
Take, for instance, the House of Ruth. They offer counseling, group counseling, the health department. They have counseling, group counseling there also. They're 24-hour hotline. There are people there to talk to you whenever you need someone to talk to.
There are support groups, there are shelters, there are programs within the court system.
The ladies there are willing and are ready to talk with you and to encourage you and to say, you know what, I'll have someone to go with you.
It doesn't matter where you live. Help is available. It's simply a phone call away. In every county and in Baltimore City, there are people who have the training, the experience, and the commitment to assist victims of domestic violence through this process. We know that this could be hard on you emotionally. We recognize that it's very difficult to leave your home. We recognize that you may not have someone to stay with, that it's hard on your children, that you may have no source of income outside of your husband's income. We know that you may still love him. We know that you may be scared of his reaction when he finds out that you're going through this process. But the only thing scarier is staying in an abusive relationship. There's no question that this is going to be hard. But if you know that up front and you make the commitment to follow through with this process, then your chances of succeeding will be much better.
I'm Judge C. Yvonne Holt-Stone. It is important to understand the procedures that the courts and clerk's offices follow when handling domestic violence cases. We realize that there are situations where people want to represent themselves for personal reasons or because they cannot afford a lawyer. Domestic violence is one of those areas of the law where people often show up in court without a lawyer. But you have to understand that the courts and the people who work for the courts have to be absolutely unbiased. We cannot take sides. How does that affect you? It means that we're not going to give you legal advice, not the clerk behind the counter, not even the judge. So you're going to have to take responsibility for making sure you get the paperwork and the procedures right.
The first thing you do is fill out a petition for protection. You can go online and print out a copy if you have a computer. If you don't, you can get a form in any district or circuit court clerk's office. The form is designed so you can check off information the court needs to know about whether you're asking for protection for yourself, a child, or a vulnerable adult. There are checkboxes to describe the abuse and checkboxes to tell the judge and commissioner what kind of protection you need. We try to get you before a judge for a hearing as soon as possible. But before we get to what happens in the courtroom, we want to tell you about what happens when courts are closed on nights and weekends.
My responsibilities as a district court commissioner are to determine probable cause and review any charges against a defendant. We have the responsibility for issuing interim protective orders in cases of domestic violence when courts are not open for business. If you seek help at night or on a weekend, you will go before a court commissioner. You will fill out the same paperwork the clerk described, and then the commissioner decides whether a protective order is justified. A commissioner has the power to issue an interim protective order which tells the respondent that he or she has to stay away from the victim. When an interim order is issued, it remains in effect until a judge holds a hearing for a temporary order, but no longer than 2 days after courts reopen. The commissioner makes a decision based on the facts he or she is given and based on guidelines developed by the judiciary. That decision, however, is not binding on the judge who hears the case in court. One other thing you should remember, no order takes effect until it is served by a law enforcement officer. These orders are a priority for police, but they have other responsibilities, and the respondent may be hard to find. The bottom line, you still have to protect yourself even after the legal system has taken steps to help you. The easiest way is to call the police.
The next thing you need to do is appear in court for the temporary hearing. Just like the hearing by a commissioner who is asked to issue an interim order, the temporary hearing is designed to allow a judge to make a preliminary assessment of the case and decide whether there may be a cause to issue a permanent order. The respondent, the person accused of the abuse, need not appear at the first hearing. The judge hears the facts, asks questions, and makes a decision. If the judge decides to issue the order, it must be served on the respondent. The judge can impose the same conditions that were imposed in the interim order. For example, stay away from home, work, and school, leave the house, surrender the children to the petitioner, or the judge can also impose different conditions. We talked earlier about how important it is that you prepare yourself for this process. The hearings take place in open court, and the judge is going to ask you questions about something that is embarrassing to talk about. There will be strangers in the courtroom. But if you know what to expect, then you can get through this process.
There's no reason to feel intimidated by a judge, because they're not there to intimidate us. They're there to help us, to enforce the law, to protect us.
I had a friend that stayed with me through the whole process, and that was calming enough for me to sit through a process that I did not want to go through.
If the temporary order is granted, the last step is a hearing for a final protective order. When the temporary order is served, it tells the respondent where and when the permanent hearing will be held, and that he has a right to attend. The court will not issue a final order unless the respondent has been given the opportunity to present his side of the story. In the courtroom, there is no assumption that the respondent has committed abuse. While the judge may have concluded that there was sufficient reason to have issued a temporary order, he or she is not going to grant a final order unless the petitioner proves that abuse occurred. Proof may include testimony from the petitioner and witnesses, photographs of any injuries, and police and medical reports. There has to be clear and convincing evidence that abuse occurred. At this point, the judge decides whether to issue a final protective order, one that addresses all issues surrounding the relationship, from financial support to use of the house and who is given custody of the children. This order can remain in effect for up to 1 year.
When I think about victims of domestic violence who have come before me, a couple of similarities stand out. First, they are courageous. I'm sure most of them don't feel particularly brave, but the fact is, it isn't easy going into a courthouse full of strangers, walking up to the counter, and asking a clerk for the domestic violence form. Second, they seem so alone. Generally speaking, women, most, but not all victims of domestic violence are women, don't talk about what is happening to them. They're ashamed or they're afraid of what their abusive partner might do to them, their family members, or friends if he finds out they've been talking. The thing to remember is you are not alone. There are thousands of other people who are going through the same thing, and there are people who will help. It doesn't matter where you live, help is available. Third, sometimes victims don't even realize that what is happening to them is wrong. The fact is, no one has a right to hurt another person. It is morally wrong, and it is against the law. The courts can order an abusive person to stay away from the victim, and the police can enforce the order if it's disobeyed.
It took me a very long time. But eventually I got the courage, and I stood up. And it was the best thing I ever did for me and my family.